Greetings shippers, welcome back, and today we're going to take a look at some lost ships for an MCU fan favorite character, Loki. We're going to be looking at some of his ships that used to be extremely prominent, or at least were well known within the fandom for a time. And while there are definitely still people who are shipping them to this day, it has not risen to the same widespread appeal of other ships. They haven't exactly taken root in the same way. And you don't have to have characters that interact for this to happen with a ship. It can happen if your characters do not interact, or they can interact. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't help. In the realm of shipping, it's hard to say what exactly will take hold. But in short, not every ship can be FrostIron. They interacted in FrostIron. We're going to be focusing on Loki from the MCU because after the turn things have taken, I think people could use some lighthearted breathing room. A stroll back to simpler times. Good times. Better times. Shipping times. We've done this before for the show Once Upon a Time, so if you missed that, check that out if you're a fan of the show or you want to see some of the ships that you missed or maybe just want to revisit. You can, as always, if you want to check it out, click the card or I will leave the link down below. Side note, this video is different from the Know Your Ships vids. It's less pro-con and more why and what happened. So if you want a full vid on any of these ships, let me know and we can of course get more in depth. We're going to start off with 5 lost Loki ships. Yes, 5. I know there are way more. So if you want more, be sure to ask for a part 2 down in those comments below. As always, follow me on social media to stay up to date and just to chit chat about fandom. And now, speaking of, let's do just that.
Firstly, what qualifies one as a lost ship? Well, as mentioned, these are ships that sprung up and enjoyed a decent amount of popularity at first. However, due to a wide array of circumstances, they have simply fallen by the wayside, often replaced with other ships, leaving those still shipping to ponder what happened, and some stumbling upon them to be either baffled or saddened that there isn't more for them. When this comes to Loki, this happened to his ships a fair bit, as the character became extremely popular after the release of Thor in 2011, in some circles eclipsing the popularity of the title character himself. As a result, Loki was everywhere in fandom, particularly when it came to fics, art, and shipping. He became so ubiquitous that for a time, he achieved near, or in the minds of some, true fandom bicycle status. We have covered the fandom bicycle, so if you want to know more about that term, you know what to do. We've got a card and a link down below. So let us look back at some of these ships, when they got popular, and when/why they started to wane. Let's start at the beginning, all the way back in 2011 with Thor. Now Thor of course delivers one obvious and mammoth ship that is still going strong at the time of this recording, that being Thorki in both the romantic and familial sense. However, that was not the only pairing this film yielded. Up first we have the pairing of 2 bicycles, with Darcy and Loki, also known as Taser Tricks, as Marvel in particular has a highly creative fan base when it comes to ship names, though it is known by some as Larcy as well. This pairing arose largely as a complementary side pairing for many to Jane and Thor. Darcy Lewis became extremely popular in the Thor film fan base to the point where she was considered by some to be the breakout character, a fact that was reflected in her expanded role in the sequel Thor 2: The Dark World, and some felt she would complement Thor's broody brother perfectly. Some saw her as a path to Loki's redemption, both pre or post-fall. Others reveled in AUs, where majority of the film's events did not occur, and instead Loki met and fell for Darcy. People were drawn to Darcy's relaxed, rebellious nature that they felt would pair well with Loki's mischievous one, perhaps creating a more lighthearted trickster, and that through her, Loki would learn to stop caring about being different or what other people thought. And of course, people loved the idea of all the adventures Loki could take Darcy on, either in the other realms or with Loki masquerading in the human world. Indeed, many of these fics had a fluffy or disconnected vibe from the rest of the MCU verse, just Loki and Darcy against the world. Though as time went on, the two got drawn into more intricate pairings and stories. 2 troublemakers out to get theirs. And there were some behind-the-scenes interviews that also added fuel to this ship. That being Kat Dennings saying that if she could interact with one character, she would love for her character Darcy to share a scene with Loki. So what happened to this pair? While there are of course some diligently keeping the ship alive, it is understandable how it faded for many. Firstly, it was a ship wherein the 2 characters hadn't actually met or shared any screen time. While not an insurmountable problem for many shippers, it did lower the appeal for some, and leave the pairing open to being overtaken by other ships where the characters did share screen time. For example, FrostIron. Or even Warfrost. Another factor. While Darcy's popularity maintained itself for quite a while, it didn't end up lasting, especially as focus on Thor's supporting cast dwindled extensively as the MCU grew. Although Darcy did manage to find herself paired quite extensively with the Winter Soldier himself for a bit. However, over time for many fans, her star faded, replaced with other side characters, and Taser Tricks was lost to many. In keeping with Thor, we also had the pairing of Loki and Jane. From the beginning, many wanted to play with Thor's love interests, finding an appeal in the wrong brother. However, when it came to Loki or Froster, there was more of a draw than that for some. There was the intrigue of Jane being attracted to Loki's magic, seeking to understand understand it, for as the film itself states,
"Your ancestors called it magic, and you call it science. Well, I come from a place where they're one and the same thing."
and Loki would find comfort in someone who is actually impressed by his skills rather than tolerant of them. Some felt the two were both outsiders in their own ways, Jane in her field and Loki in his methods, and that they could find commonality there, that Jane would be drawn to Loki's more quiet cunning rather than Thor's loud, boisterous nature. This pairing continued and was bolstered by the much maligned Thor 2: The Dark World, a film that added more fodder for some, as this time the two characters actually met, and their interactions proved heated, leading to some imagining a passion in their relationship that some shippers had fathomed, but was new to many. Loki's open admission to enjoying Jane's more fiery aspects was encouragement as well. So what happened to this ship? Well, there were some who never took to Jane at all, so she was a hard sell for certain shippers, and on top of that, Natalie Portman's disinterest in portraying the character past Thor 2 led to the character being rather gracelessly, if necessarily, being written off-screen. Or perhaps her perceived disinterest, as it has been hinted by her and by others that perhaps it was Marvel's writers who were unsure what to do with the character and were simply done with her. Although there are now rumors that she may be coming back into the Marvel Universe and would be excited to do so should there be a role for her. With so little excitement for her in the first place and so many more emerging ships for Loki, Froster found itself cast to the wayside. Speaking of emerging ships, let's jump forward to the Avengers, all the way back in 2012. A film also full of Loki enthusiasm and the one that solidified his fandom status as a favorite and led to many fics in general of him teaming up with the Avengers, in essence solidifying his permanence in the minds of fans in the MCU. Unless, of course, one was not fond of the character. Now, fans have many standout scenes from the Avengers film, and one that immediately jumps to mind is the interrogation scene between Loki and Black Widow.
Agent Barton was sent to kill me. He made a different call.
And what will you do if I vow to spare him?
Not let you out.
Oh, no, but I like this.
The scene was dark and showcased the bitterness and depths Loki was willing to go to meet his ends, and also highlighted not only Natasha's strength but her vulnerability, and how she seamlessly interweaves both into her being in order to function. The line, "I've got red in my ledger," was heavily featured for a while, a source of many AUs ranging from dark to light, which affected this pairing and others. And on top of that, a ship was born, a dark ship known as Black Frost. These fics were often very smutty, and even if they weren't, dove into the depths of each character, probing a level of understanding some fans felt other characters could not give. People used it to explore the utilitarian functional aspects of coupling, particularly focusing on the line, "Love is for children," while others took it deeper, to each being able to reveal hidden truths, all in secret, a secret relationship between two naturally secretive people. Aesthetics played a part too, fiery red against blackness and dark green. And this was another ship fueled by some extra material, as people were drawn to pictures of Loki and Black Widow on set, talking, joking, hugging, play fighting, just the whole 9 yards. These photos also spawned some tasteless memes, but that is neither here nor there. There was of course fluff too, but it is not this ship's main appeal. So what happened to keep this torch burning at such a low ember? Well, even during the Avengers, this ship was not the one that caught the majority of people's attention for either character, with Thorki, FrostIron, and Clintasha rising to the foreground. Also, its darkness was off-putting for some, and most people did not get that kind of read off the scene, and were quick to judge those who did, due to the for some uncomfortable undertones. Nevertheless, it remains for those watching Avengers for the first time. There will always be some who want Loki to help Nat get that red out of her ledger. Speaking of darkness, it doesn't get much darker than Loki and his, for the majority of the film, brainwashed henchman, Hawkeye, in the ship known as Frosthawk, though some call it Snowbird, which does not have quite the same punch. Of course, there were your standard dub and non-con compulsion fics, which puts some off for reasons that are understandable. But people also went deeper, exploring how in their eyes Loki too had been under Thanos' control, at the very least thanks to torture, and as a result the two actually had something to bond over, as well as being viewed by many as the odd people out in their respective groups. For some it came to be a ship of understanding, and there were some touching works with Loki coming to understand and sympathize with Deaf Clint, as that was a character point very much explored in the MCU fandom. And of course for those who wanted to explore the darkness, there was that appeal as well, as some really enjoyed the character study aspect of one or both characters, and of course were drawn to the doomed element. There are some who simply adore a tragic romance, or whatever this was. So where did this one go? Well, if Black Frost was too dark for many, this was over the line. Coupled with the appeal of other ships and the lack of, at the time of this recording, significant interaction, for many it was a brief spark that never ignited into a full-fledged shipping flame. For those looking for a kinder, more understanding ship, some found it in FrostShield, the pairing of Captain America and Loki. Some even began to draw this connection before the Avengers, and after Captain America the First Avenger, which was released shortly after Thor, with some fics having these two meet after Loki falls, as he lands in New York and ends up finding Steve, sometimes having amnesia, sometimes not. And of course, the Avengers fics. There were many that featured Loki kidnapping Steve, depriving the Avengers of their leader, trying to stymie them, but then ending up befriending Steve, and spending time with him in secret. For many, the appeal lies in the fact that they felt Captain America was separate from the other Avengers, not only as one of Marvel's favorite cliches, the man out of time, but also because of his backstory. Some felt Steve and Loki could actually find a lot of common ground, with Steve once having been the victim, bullied for his small stature and ill health, and Loki set aside for his magic and less brawny nature, both finding strength in external sources, but taking it in different ways, with Loki giving into bitterness and Cap overcoming it, seeking to prove himself and his worth. Some were drawn to the idea of Loki showing Steve he had nothing to prove, and had been worth it all along. Others liked the idea of Loki being able to show Steve his true form, as in a sense, Steve has another form as well that is hidden, and that Steve could help Loki see that his true form was beautiful. Of course, you can imagine all the drawing fics that emerged.
I want you to draw me like one of your French girls.
And all the magic fics, where Steve was reverted to his true form by Loki. In short, there was a lot of variety. For a time, it was a ship that people placed a great deal of thought into. So what happened? Again, it was swallowed by others, and did not take hold in the manner of some other ships. And if one was looking to pair Cap with one of the Odin sons, it was most frequently with Thor, while Loki found his way to Tony. And for some, the reasoning simply didn't hold any weight. Although when it comes to Loki, there are still some who will unironically say, get this man a shield.
So those were 5 lost Loki ships. Do you still ship them? Did you ever? Are you intrigued by any of these? Let me know down below. Do you need a part 2? Because remember, that is definitely on the table. So I don't want to see any, you forgot. No. There is no forgetting. I reiterate, no forgetting. We're saving. They're being saved for part 2. So please ask for that, because the world needs to know about Warfrost. They just need to. Thanks so much for hanging out with me and taking a journey back down shipping memory lane. It's a good ship to sail. Small, but sturdy. As always, I'm looking forward to seeing all of you again soon, and let's get to that outro.
This has been Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Special thanks to all of my patrons, names on the side. As always, stay tuned for many more exciting videos coming soon, for there are as many ships out there as there are stars in the sky.